Hello, I'm Shemaine, one of your nursery specialists at Natural Baby Shower, and today I am joined by Chris, the Daddy Sleep Consultant. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Wonderful. Would you like to tell everybody what it is that you do?
Yes, so my name's Chris McFadden, I'm the Daddy Sleep Consultant. I'm a specialist for getting babies and toddlers to sleep, which they're not often very good at doing naturally,
Exactly.
So it's my job to help baby sleep and help ultimately their family sleep.
So Chris, we get asked a lot of questions here in the store regarding what to wear in bed and bedtime routines. So is there a nice routine that we should be following?
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of parents ask me in my Q&As and anything I kind of do online, when is a good time to start a bedtime routine? And I always say as soon as possible. So even if it's just a couple of days after you're back from the hospital or the birthing centre, just to start it straight away. A lot of parents get worried when they hear that. They think, oh, that sounds maybe a little bit like sleep training, or it's too regimented for a really young newborn.
Right.
But actually it's really, really important for them, and it's really, really gentle at that stage. We're talking about a really simple, gentle routine that helps differentiate or separate daytime from nighttime. So everything that's going on in the day, lots of feeding, sleeping, but it's all done in a very stimulated, bright, light environment. And what we're doing is saying at some point in the evening towards the future bedtime, we're putting a kind of line down the middle and saying daytime is now done, we're going to separate it and we're going to start nighttime. And we do that through a bedtime routine. As I said, that's really, really gentle in those early days.
Yes.
It's about, it doesn't have to be a set time because the baby's sleeping regularly throughout the day, but it's at some point close to that bedtime, whether it's just before. Like for example, if you want your bedtime to be 7 o'clock, if the baby wakes up around 6, then maybe you'd start the bedtime routine. If the baby wakes up about 8, you'd maybe start it around then. Whatever works for you as a family, but it's a really gentle routine of bath or a gentle, well at that age probably just a gentle wash. A feed, but instead of the feed being in a lovely bright lit room, stimulated, it's in a dimly lit room, a slightly darker room, away from all the bright lights and noise of everyday life in the home. They've already been into a fresh sleep suit, maybe into their sleeping bag by that point, and then they're going to be in the place that they're going to sleep for the night, obviously into lots of wake ups during the night, but that place that they will sleep for the rest of the night. So it's really gentle, but it's about separating day and night. And what's really, really important about the bedtime routine is you can't tell your baby, even baby's 3 weeks old or 6 months old, you can't tell a baby what's coming up, what's on the agenda, as I like to say.
Of course.
You have to show them. And the way to show them is through a bedtime routine that after the bath comes, or I often recommend a bottle before the bath as well, or not so much a bottle. We're bottle fed in our house, so that's why I say bottle fed.
We do.
So we do a feed before the bath, a bath, and then a feed, and then a bedtime story, and then into the cot. And the reason that doing that every time is so that the baby learns that after the first feed comes the bath, after the bath comes the next feed, then it comes the sleeping bag, then comes the bedtime story, and ultimately all leading up to going to bed and sleeping longer stretches. And by doing a bedtime routine and doing the same steps nearly every night, you can't do it every single night, but nearly every night, your baby understands what's coming next, and because they understand what's coming next, they feel safe, they feel secure. That's so important. Because babies don't know what's coming next, and because they don't know what's coming next, they can get anxious and stressed. So by showing them every time what's happening, they get relaxed and they know what's coming and they're happy.
Absolutely. We did the same in my household. We were bath, bottle, bed, and we did that for a very long time. And I have to say my son responded really, really well. And he's 5 now, and it's something even now that he will still follow. He knows he can have a drink, he has a bath, and then it's bed. And again, no problems, touch wood, so far.
and it's the same in even our 3-year-old's the exact same. But sometimes we get a little curveball and we're doing our routine and he turns around to us and says, "Mummy, Daddy, I want to go to bed." And I'm like, "Really? Okay, I'll go then." Get there before he changes his mind.
It's just kind of putting that program in the head, like you said. It may not work every day, but putting it in there, and they're like, okay, now we've had the bottle, okay, now bath's coming up. And definitely I think it helps with this really nice smooth transition. And it's really gentle, as you said.
Really gentle.
Yeah, I'm all for routines, absolutely. So
daytime routine, a lot longer. You're talking maybe 3 or 4 months, but that bedtime routine from as early as you possibly want to.
Perfect. So moving on to what little one should be wearing in bed. Again, that's another question we get asked. what kind of sleeping bag? Do we need a sleeping bag? Do we wear anything under a sleeping bag? So where do we stand on that?
I'm a massive component of, supporter of sleeping bags.
Yeah.
Even in the summer, really like sleeping bags, even if it's a sleeping bag and a nappy, or in the winter a big heavy sleeping bag with a sleep suit and a vest. Lots of parents think, well, we would like something, then our baby would like something, and that's not always the right thing, but as parents, we like to sleep with a duvet.
Yes.
We get used to it. And babies, we find our babies certainly like to sleep with a sleeping bag. They've always enjoyed it. Our toddler's now too old for it. I'm sure he would get into one if he could. But our youngest, at 15 months, he absolutely loves his. And so in the summer, we're looking at that. So the ideal temperature for a room should be between 16 and 20 degrees, which might feel a little bit cold for lots of families, but it's better to be a little bit cooler than too warm.
Right,
that's always the
Yes.
recommendation around safe sleep.
Yes.
And then you add the layers based on the temperature of the room. The simple guidance will always be whatever you feel comfortable in as an adult. Your baby, up until about a year until they're able to start regulating their temperature, will be one layer above you, one more layer than what an adult will be wearing. But at bedtime, 16 to 20 degrees, you're looking at a vest top and a sleep suit, or just a sleep suit, and then a certain tog of sleeping bag, usually around 2 to 2.5 tog sleeping bag. When you're getting kind of more between 20 and 25 degrees, you're probably looking at more maybe a sleep suit and a very low tog sleeping bag, so maybe like a 0.5.
A summer weight.
Very summer weight,
Right.
yeah. You can get 0.2s and 0.5s.
Yes.
And then if you're starting to go above that, you're looking at into just nappy. Kind of nappy and maybe the summer sleeping bag. We'll always, even in the hot days, we'll put our baby in a sleeping bag because it's really light, but we'll maybe just have the nappy underneath, so that again he feels, if the temperature drops during the night. And that's the other thing as well, you can't just focus on bedtime. You've got, like, for the last few weeks, you tend to, we're in August, it was kind of warmish during the day, but it was quite cool during the night, so you have to be thinking about that. And when it gets cooler during the night and a baby starts to get cold, that's when they're more likely to wake up as well, because as the night goes on, they're getting a bit more restless, a bit lighter sleep. Temperature will impact them a little bit more. Plus, we don't want our kids to be cold either.
Of course.
So it's about thinking about all night. A lot of parents worry about it. They really worry about, what should I wear my baby, dress my baby? And I know when we were first-time parents, we were always worrying about it.
It's so scary when you're a first-time
so
parent.
scary.
You really don't know what to do for the best. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's easy when you've been there and you're doing it regularly, and but it is very scary. But it's kind of 16 to 20 degrees.
Yes.
And then you're layering up from that. If it's over that, then just start to think about maybe a lower tog sleeping bag with the sleep suit underneath.
Perfect. And again, thinking about what's in baby's room, I know we used to have this little kind of projector that had lights that shined on the ceiling, but it didn't actually work for my son. Do things like that kind of help? Can they help? No? For sleeping,
No,
you know, like
no.
lullabies and music and...
They all sound lovely, and they really are. We had a mobile for our first child. That was before I was a sleep consultant, and became very boring around what's in the bedroom. But ultimately, all these kind of mobiles with noises and flashing lights and things like that, they stimulate the baby. What a baby will sleep best in environment-wise. Obviously, we can talk about the cot, but in terms of the room, is black, pitch black darkness. Blackout blinds, always a simple recommendation, and not just blackout blinds that cover kind of the window and maybe there's a lot of light coming through them. They look nice, like white or grey ones that my wife used to have because they were much nicer looking than darker ones.
Yeah, absolutely.
But really dark room will help a baby sleep. There's a science behind it as well, which I won't go into at this moment, but there's a science behind it. Which will help the baby sleep better and longer. Stimulating lights will lead to the baby either struggling to get to sleep or help them wake up, or not help them wake up, but lead to them waking up during the night. So anything that's stimulating that can help a baby get to sleep as well might not be there when the baby wakes up during the night as well, and they might start looking for that light or sound to help them get back to sleep. And if it's not there, then the baby will struggle to get back to sleep themselves. So there's two things to it. One is the stimulation around the room, and then the two is if it's helping the baby get to sleep, it might not be able to help the baby get back to sleep if that stimulating sound or light is finished.
So you said you became interested in sleep because obviously after your first child was born. So how did you go about getting into that?
Quite simply, he couldn't sleep.
Right.
he was terrible.
Oh dear.
I think we did all the typical NCT classes and we enjoyed them. Don't get me wrong, this is not a criticism of any NCT. We love meeting people, and we love the information around it, learning how to put a nappy on and things like that. But there's not a lot of information around sleep. And even now as a sleep consultant, I can see that lots of parents or expecting parents, the first and foremost concern is the health and safety of their baby when they're pregnant, and that's completely understandable. Even now, my wife is pregnant with her third child, and it's her biggest concern. She doesn't have to worry about the sleep as much because she's got me to deal with that. But it's still her biggest concern, and that is parents' concern. And there's almost an expectation that a new parent, an expecting parent, will be sleep deprived. And certainly for 6 to 12 weeks, that can be absolutely expected. But there can also be an expectation that babies will sleep better as well. And so we didn't know anything about sleep. We never learned about it before we had our first child, Teddy, just over 3 years ago. We were just told you shouldn't leave your baby on their own at any point for the first 6 months, and if your baby's upset, you pick them up and you cuddle them. That's all being well, but then when there comes a point where you need some sleep yourself, you need to get yourself a coffee or a tea, and you can't do anything because the baby will not be allowed to put down. And that's kind of the situation we got into with Teddy. He wasn't sleeping. He was fed to sleep, which a lot of parents will do, and we thought that's what you did. We used to see him being milk drunk, as we called it, kind of flopping after his feed, and we thought it was funny, and it was, but we thought that's what you did. But ultimately, what that was doing was creating an association where he could only settle himself to sleep with that feed,
with that bottle,
with the bottle, the suckling motion, whether it's the bottle, the teat of the bottle, or mum's breast. It became a problem. He was not able to get to sleep himself without the feed. He'd suddenly stopped falling asleep on the feed, and we didn't know what to do. He would wake up during the night, and we did all the things you can possibly imagine. We rocked him, patted him, fed him, put him in our bed. It was like a checklist of things. And ultimately, 6 months, we had enough. We couldn't take it anymore. He was unhappy. He was cranky all the time. He wasn't the baby that he needed to be. We certainly weren't the parents we needed to be.
We're a reflection of each other.
Yeah.
So how the parents are feeling, baby's going to feel.
Absolutely. It's all about happy family, happy parents, happy baby, happy parents. You're absolutely right. And we were tired. We were grumpy. We weren't in a good place physically, emotionally, and as a couple. Lots of parents forget about this, but whatever your situation is, if you're in a relationship, you have to be happy, which will then feed round to the rest of the house. And you don't have productive conversations at 2 o'clock in the morning.
No.
They're not patient conversations. They are usually quite short, snappy, and grumpy with each other. And then you don't have the evenings to sit down and talk about things and have a glass of wine or a bit of dinner and chat. And that's where we were. And we decided we couldn't go in anymore with that. And we got a sleep consultant in to help us, a local sleep consultant. And within a couple of weeks, her life had just changed. It was almost the same kind of change that we'd had when Teddy was first born. It was that dramatic, without sounding that dramatic. It really was that dramatic. We suddenly went from being unhappy, sleep deprived, having a cranky baby, to a baby that was now sleeping. He was energetic, he was smiling so much more. He was just happy. We were happy, we were getting some sleep, we were connecting as a couple again.
Good. Got your evenings back as well.
We got evenings back. We probably drank a bit too much wine then as well, but it was just, everything was just so much better. And it's such a profound impact on us that I decided to look into becoming a sleep consultant myself, because I saw how that person helped our family. I wanted to help other families do the same, and that's what I do today, 2.5 years on, and it's extremely rewarding.
Fantastic. But there are so many parents out there, I know, who I was probably one of them myself, like in the early stages, you just feel like, oh, baby's not sleeping, and you kind of just get on with it because that's kind of what you think you're supposed to do. Babies just cry and
And it makes me really sad to hear that, but that's the reality of it.
It is.
And it's never a judgment on any parent who does feel like that and does go with that approach, either because they don't know about sleep consultants, they don't know what sleep training is, or they believe that they know what sleep training is, and it's actually not necessarily the right view, and it makes them not want to do it.
Right.
But there's a little bit of continue on. I get so many clients that come to me with 3-year-olds, 3.5-year-olds. We think it's too late, but we just wanted to finally check. No, it's absolutely not too late. 3.5-year-olds,
Right.
even up to 4-year-old. I work with up to 4-year-olds. It's not too late.
Right.
Habits are more ingrained. It takes a little bit more time to
Yes.
resolve it, but it absolutely can be resolved.
Done, yeah.
And so it's really important that if you want to carry on and fight on and go through what you're going through, absolutely. I'm not here to judge, but if you do want help, you seek it out, because
Definitely there.
it's definitely there.
Yeah.
And in the space of a couple of weeks, you can literally make profound changes to your life that will only make it better.
Chris, what exactly is a sleep consultant?
So a sleep consultant is basically someone that will help a child or help parents teach their child to sleep better. Now, lots of parents will say, I want my baby to sleep through the night. And I always say, your objective shouldn't be to get your baby to sleep through the night, because that's the outcome you want. But what the holy grail is teaching your baby to self-settle. Self-settling is where, like as an adult, you'll go into bed, you might read a book for a little bit, and then you'll turn the light off and you'll go to sleep. You don't need any help to do that. Now, some parents, some adults do. They might listen to a podcast or watch TV in the background. Those are not good sleep association, but many adults do. But generally, most adults will just go into bed, do a bit of reading, turn the light off and go to sleep. That's self-settling. That's what we want our babies to do as well. So you can do your lovely bedtime routine that we talked about, give them lots and lots of cuddles, then you put them into their cot awake, because they're going to settle themselves to sleep, and then you walk out the room. You don't have to worry about them again for ideally 11 or 12 hours. Obviously, all parents still worry about their children, but 11 or 12 hours ideally, they then settle themselves off to sleep, and then when they wake up during the night, depending on what age they are, they might need a feed during the night, depends on how old they are, and if they're hungry, things like that, they'll be able to settle themselves back to sleep. A baby that is fed to sleep, for example, or rocked to sleep, or patted to sleep, things like that, they are helped to get into their sleep cycle. And if they're helped to get into their sleep cycle, when they wake up during the night, and all humans wake up during the night, even as adults we wake up during the night, if they're helped to get to sleep in the first place, when they wake up during the night, they're going to need help to get back to sleep, and they'll be looking for that same help that they got to sleep in the first place to get back to sleep. So that's what sleep consultants do. They teach the baby to self-settle over a period of time. Now, lots of parents believe that self-settling process is about something called crying it out. And I have to be completely honest, some sleep consultants do that. I personally don't. Sleep training isn't fun, and it's not for everyone, I have to be completely honest, but it's not fun during a couple of weeks phase. But even in 3 to 5 nights, you can see massive improvements in your baby starting to sleep longer stretches, be able to put themselves to sleep, back to sleep, and usually within 2 to 3 weeks, you have a child that is sleeping at night and is sleeping for their naps during the day, which it just becomes a cycle. Lots of parents think that a baby that doesn't sleep during the day will absolutely sleep at night because they must be shattered. So of course they're going to sleep at night. It's the opposite. They fight it, and it becomes even more difficult to put down. So it's about helping a baby understand sleep is a good thing, it's a positive thing, so that when you put them into a cot, they enjoy it. They go off to sleep, they sleep as long as they need, and then they get back up. They have a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours, depending on their age. They can have fun, play their games, get fed, and then they go and have another sleep and do it again. And then they get all prepared for night time, which is when they should start sleeping 11 or 12 hours a night. And it's funny when parents do start to see their children sleep through the night. All they've wanted is their children to sleep through at night, and in those first few days, they're the ones that are actually getting less sleep because they're constantly staring at the monitor, waiting for their child to wake up.
Absolutely.
And then when the baby does sleep through the night, they're like, oh, should we go and check them?
Yeah.
Are they okay? They've not woken up, and it's funny to hear these stories.
Absolutely.
And certainly even I remember when our child first slept through the night, my wife was like, I need to go and check he's okay, and I'm like,
Yeah.
Wait a second, you could be waking him up. I know, but he's never slept this long. I'm like, let's play it out. And he was absolutely fine, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to watch that parents, all they've ever wanted is this, and then the moment it happens, they're like, I need to make sure they're okay.
They just don't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah.
I was one of those as well. I was like, should I touch him? Should I keep breathing?
Poke
It's
the
like,
bear.
no, you've got all this, he's asleep. That's
Yeah.
it. Get on with life.
Yeah.
You've got to have an evening to yourself.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
After a few days, you do get used to it. You get more
Absolutely.
comfortable,
Absolutely.
and then before you know it, you're moaning because the nap finished a little bit earlier than normal.
Yeah.
And you can only imagine that 3-4 weeks before that. But it really is profoundly life-changing. Yeah.
So Chris, we've got some questions from our followers on Instagram. It's regarding naps during the day. She said her little one isn't napping as much during the day, so should she maybe change her bedtime routine, make it maybe a bit earlier?
It depends on the routine. A lot of parents do that. If the baby's not napping well, they'll bring bedtime forward. I reverse to that. I know it's a slightly different question, but if the baby's not sleeping late into the night or waking up early in the morning, should you push bedtime back? Really, you shouldn't. There are times when you should absolutely bring bedtime forward. If your baby's nap usually finishes at 4 o'clock and the nap finished at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and the baby's going to be so tired come your 7 o'clock bedtime, let's say it's 7 o'clock, then bring bedtime forward half an hour, 45 minutes, something like that. The balance is not to do it every single night, because if you do it every single night, before you know it, you've moved your baby's bedtime routine or schedule from 7 till 7 to 6 till 6, and then the baby will start waking maybe 5:30, 6 a.m, which might seem okay if your baby's not a good sleeper, but if your baby's a good sleeper, suddenly waking up at 5:30, 6 o'clock, most parents don't particularly enjoy that, because 7 o'clock's early enough as it is without throwing an extra hour or hour and a half in it. So it's more about trying to find out what's causing the naps to not allow the baby to sleep as long in the day as possible as you'd want. So it might be that the baby's naps are too short. Cat napping is a really common problem. Babies sleeping for 40-45 minutes, which is the length of one sleep cycle for a child.
Right.
And then the baby wakes up, thinks it's time to get up. Parent doesn't know that the baby should actually be going back to sleep potentially.
Right.
Gets the baby up and baby thinks it's normal. But actually, depending on the age of the baby, they may actually need a bit longer than 40 minutes. And if you do 40-minute naps all day, and they might only want to sleep 2 or 3 times, before you know it, you've got a tired and grumpy baby during the day, and there's a long period then before the final nap finishing in bedtime. So again, I've got some routine guides on my Instagram, which lays it out what you should be doing based on the age range. Obviously it's just a guide, every baby's different, but for example, 6 to 9 months, 5 or 6 months to 8 months, baby should be, final nap should be finishing around about 5:30 for a 7 o'clock bedtime. So an hour and a half between, that's absolutely fine. Gives them time to have their dinner, their bedtime routine, their feed, their bath, etc. When you start to get more kind of 9 to 12 months, you're looking at probably around about 4 o'clock, 4:30, so 2.5 to 3 hours from the final nap to bedtime. And then after 12 months, might be more 3.5 to 4 hours before bedtime. The baby has to be awake. Obviously, every baby's different, but they're rough guides. But it should give you an idea of when your nap should finish, and that's really key to avoid a grumpy baby before bedtime. And that's where you hear that phrase "witching hour." Right. Which we suffered as with our 3-year-old when he was before he was 6 months, before he was sleep trained.
Yeah.
And that witching hour was quite simply, we were trying to stretch him from 3:30 till 7 o'clock, which he was only able to stay awake for 2 hours at a time, and we were expecting him to stay awake for 3.5-4 hours because we had a set bedtime. In that situation, we maybe should have brought bedtime forward a few times to 6 or 6:30 when he was really tired. But again, actually the real issue was the lack of daytime sleep. We should have been stretching it out a little bit more and working on his naps so that he can sleep longer.
Wonderful. Well, I hope that helps. We've got some more questions as well. So a few questions, Chris, we have from some of our followers. I'll just kind of read through some of them. One of them is asking, my baby is 7 months old and sleeps 10 to 11 hours per night, waking up twice. Is that enough sleep?
There's night sleep and then there's day sleep, and what you're looking at as a parent is to understand roughly how long they're sleeping over a 24-hour period. So it might be that 10 or 11 hours might not seem enough, but then if they're having good daytime sleep, it might be okay. But if they're having 10 or 11 hours sleep at night and only having 1 or 2 hours during the day, then I would say that that's probably not enough. So one thing that's really, really important is to understand your baby's energy, your baby's mood, because that will very quickly tell you if they're getting enough sleep or not. On the face of it, 10 or 11 hours is probably just slightly under, because usually babies that don't sleep 11 to 12 hours a night often have challenges sleeping during the day as well. And if they're having challenges sleeping during the day, then they probably aren't sleeping the right amount of time, which then contributing to the slightly under amount at night time will mean probably over a 24-hour period it's a bit short. Also, it depends on the feeds. How long is the feeds taking? How long does it take the baby to settle back to sleep? So I'd try and understand what's causing the kind of 10 or 11 hour sleep. Maybe the baby's waking a little bit early, maybe around 5 or 5:30 a.m. Have a look at the sleep environment. Is the room dark enough? Obviously, between summer and winter, the room becomes a little bit lighter or stays darker. It's important that room is as dark as possible all the way through until wake up time in the morning. That's a big contributor for babies waking less than the 12 hours. It might also be a habit. Babies start to wake up again and get fed 5:30 in the morning, and before you know it, the baby's metabolism is got used to getting fed at that time, and they're starting to wake up and look for it. So try and hold off on any feeding until kind of 6 o'clock, 6:30 minimum, to again delay the metabolism starting. And also at 7 months, again, unless the baby's huge and is really, really hungry during the night, then 2 feeds may be a little bit too much. But again, parents really have to make that decision. Is the baby starving when they wake up during the night? Are they finishing their full feed? Are they staying awake for the full feed? If they're only having a small amount, if they're falling asleep quite quickly in the feed, then it's probably they're not waking up for hunger, they're probably waking up for some comfort feeding. But it's a hard one to answer without knowing all the information, but I would say it's slightly under the amount, and it really then depends what's happening during the day as well.
Another question we have from one of our followers, which is probably quite popular, is how did you stop her toddler from coming into her room at night?
Yeah, it's not an easy one. Yeah, they're quite independent, quite clear on what they want and what they don't want. Lots of parents actually, and it's not necessarily something I advocate, but lots of parents actually put a child gate across the bedroom door. Lots of parents don't want to do that because it feels like it's a prison, and that's absolutely fine. And as I said, I certainly don't promote parents do that, but if they do that, then it can work for them. That's to prevent the child getting out and coming into the room as and when they feel like it. But it is about setting boundaries, not just from a physical perspective, but showing your child what they should and shouldn't be doing. So if the child keeps getting out of bed, put them back to bed. Repeat, repeat, repeat. There's a technique called rapid return, but it's also coined as Groundhog Day. And the reason it's called this, it's anecdotal, but it's based on a mother who had to put their child back to sleep. I think it was about 80 times over an hour period or an hour and a half period. And then after that hour and a half, they stopped getting up and they never got up again after that. Probably slightly anecdotal, but the concept absolutely works, because if your child is getting up, they're deciding that's what they want to do, and if you let them do that, they think that that's acceptable. Remember, they're 2 years old, 3 years old, they play by their own rules. You have to set their rules, you have to control their bedtime, you have to control where they sleep, you have to control how they sleep, how long they sleep for. With toddlers, maybe not so much at the 2-year end, but at the 3-year end, it's all about control. They become little dictators. Let's not mince our words here. They dictate everything in our lives, and we should give them control because they crave it. If you've got a craving for something, maybe a bit of chocolate, maybe it's best to just give it have a little bit, then have the full bar, right? And it's the same with toddlers. Give them control, but give them control of things that matter to them but don't matter to you. So at bedtime, let them choose their own pyjamas, let them choose which book they want to read, let them have that control. They will appreciate it and it will fulfill that craving inside them, but you then control when they go to sleep, where they sleep all night. But when they get up, it's about taking them back to bed and showing them what they should do. Whether you stay with them until they go to sleep or you put them back into bed and leave them to it, and if they get back out, then go on, but you're constantly repeating that behaviour of putting them back into bed so that they know what they've been doing. Funnily enough, my 3-year-old, I've never had this problem, and it's not because I'm a sleep consultant, it's just he never gets out of bed. He's in his toddler bed for about a year now, or just over a year. He still doesn't get out of his bed. Even in the morning. This morning, he shouted, "Mommy, Mommy." It's like my wife shouts back, "Teddy, you can't get out of bed." And he's like, no, I'm staying in bed. And he stayed up until one of us went and absolutely carried him out of the bed, which is great in the fact that it means we've never had that issue of toddler creeping during the night, but at the same time it would mean that I had to actually get up and take him to the toilet last night because he wouldn't do it himself. So there's a balance, but when a baby, a toddler is getting out of bed and you don't want them to be during the night, you have to show them what they're going to be doing. And if they're at a certain age, communicate with them the next day. Accept that they will understand what you're saying. They might not change it, but it's all part of that process of making change.
So another great question we have from our followers: should you follow wake windows or set nap times?
That's a great question. For those watching that don't know what a wake window is, and I certainly didn't know what a wake window is.
I didn't know one before you came along.
So wake windows are the period of time between a baby waking up from previous sleep to the point that they need to go down for another sleep. That changes as the baby gets older. Usually you stop talking about wake windows after about a year. Babies typically start from about 4 or 5 months. Before that, they're just regular sleeping. You don't really consider wake windows, but about 4 or 5 months, they're able to start with staying awake between naps and from when they wake up in the morning and nap periods for about an hour and a half, getting closer to 2 hours. So around about 6 months, they can stay awake for about 2 hours. Then it goes to about 2.5, 7, 8 months. Around about 9 months, it's more kind of 3 hours, and then it pushes out to 3.5 hours. And as the wake windows increase, the number of naps start to reduce. A baby that has a wake window of about 2 hours around about 6 months, they'll typically sleep about 3 times a day, ideally. So that's what wake windows are.
Right.
That will typically then set your times in the day that a baby will sleep. So when a baby wakes up from the morning about, say, let's call it 7 o'clock, a 6-month-old baby, the first nap will probably be around about 9 o'clock.
Right.
Now, wake windows change day to day as well, because as babies start to do teething, they go through developmental leaps. It won't be 2 hours, it might be an hour and a half, it might be an hour and 15 minutes. So it changes based on their energy levels as well, just like us. We sometimes need a nap during the day because we're tired, so we can't go from morning to night. And it's the same for babies, their wake windows start to decrease a little bit. But what it does is give you a guide on when roughly your baby should be sleeping. So when they wake up in the morning, roughly when your baby should be going down for their first nap. Then when they wake, roughly how long or when their next nap should be. But ultimately the most important thing is your baby's sleep cues. Now, a baby's sleep cues, most parents will think a baby's sleep cue for going to sleep is rubbing their eyes or yawning. Actually, that's a little step too far. They should already be in their cot by that point. So when you see a baby starting to yawn or rub their eye, they should already be in their cot.
Right.
What a parent should be looking for is pink eyebrows is a common sign. These are kind of younger babies, kind of 4, 5, 6, 7 months. Pink eyebrows, zoning out. So they get tired, they naturally lose concentration, they're less able to focus, and they almost slump in what they're doing. They can be playing nicely and all of a sudden they're kind of off a cliff, they lose that concentration. That is the first sign that your baby is ready to be put in their nap put in their cot for their nap or their bedtime sleep. Well, usually you have a bedtime routine anyway, but usually for naps. That's the sleep cues, and that will determine when a baby should go to sleep. Your baby might wake up at 7, they might be due to go down about 9, but if your baby's telling you 8:30 that they are just really tired, listen to them. That is the most important thing you should do with your baby. Listen to them, and that's why sleepy cues are the most important. The wake windows are and set nap times are a good guide for you to follow, but ultimately it's based on what your baby's telling you in that moment.
That's amazing, because I think I did the same thing. I was told when you see them rubbing their eyes or they're yawning or there's just that kind of movement from the baby, you know it's time to sleep, but you're saying it's, it'd be even before that. That's
yeah, because then you're giving yourself, if you can get them when they're losing concentration and losing focus, you've got 5 minutes, and that's all it really is, 5 minutes to put them in a sleeping bag if they're going to sleep in a bag for their nap. Maybe even if you want to read a bedtime, a little bit short bedtime story before, if you have a nap routine. If you're getting them when they're already yawning, by the time you get them into their cot, they could actually be moving into the next stage, which is overtiredness, when they start to get cranky, start crying, start arching their back.
It's harder to get them to sleep at that point.
That's when they start
in
to
my
fight
experience.
Yes. And everyone experiences they start to fight sleep. So getting in that point, you will allow yourself to get the baby to go down a more optimal time, rather than starting to move into that overtired phase, which is more difficult. Even with a baby that's self-settling and good at sleeping, my 15-month-old, if we put them down a bit too overtired, it can be a little bit more of a struggle. So it's important to get them at that right stage.
Perfect. I hope this is helping. This is like golden information. I wish I had this as well. So I really hope this helps. So the last question we have from one of our followers, Chris, is what's the ideal nap time and length for a 2-year-old? She says, my little one used to sleep 7 a.m. till 6 p.m. and now sleeping 8 a.m. till 5:15 p.m.
So a 2-year-old should still be sleeping around 1.5 hours per day. All children have different sleep needs. Some have low sleep needs, some have high sleep needs, which basically means some need, it's the same as adults, some get by on 6 hours of sleep at night and some need 8 or 9 hours to function. And babies and toddlers are the same. Some need more sleep and some need less sleep. But a toddler of 2 should be still sleeping about 1.5 hours, and that should be post lunch. Depends on the parent's bedtime or kind of night schedule. But if it was a 7 till 7, I would say 3 o'clock is the ideal wake up time. So you're given a nice period of 4 hours until bedtime to allow the toddler to get tired and play, have dinner, back bedtime routine, etc., and be tired for bedtime. Not overtired, but tired enough.
Yeah.
But there's a bit of trial and error on that. As I said, with the sleep needs, some children might actually be better with 4.5 hours, or maybe closer to 5 hours. But somewhere in that kind of 4 to 4.5 hours is probably what you'd be looking at. Now, with regards to 8 till 5, I don't know why the routines change, but often parents typically start to push bedtime back if their baby starts to wake a bit earlier. So if baby starts waking at 5 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock, they go, oh, maybe they're having too much sleep, maybe we'll push bedtime back. But what can actually be happening is overtiredness, and we just talked about that.
Of course.
If you start pushing bedtime back, that can lead to the child being more tired for going to bed. Overtiredness, because of the children then start to fight it. And if they start to fight it, they increase their cortisol in their body. And cortisol is what helps us stay awake and it helps us wake up in the morning. If we have a higher level base of cortisol going to bed, then we're going to have more cortisol in our body as we go through the night, which means then that our body starts to want to wake up earlier than it would naturally want to. So that might have been the reason for the 5 o'clock starting to become more of a habit. Rather than push, in that situation, rather than push bedtime back, I would absolutely keep it the same and look at resolving the issue of the early waking. There's something that's causing that 5 or 5:30 am wake. We talked a little bit about it earlier. Early waking, sleep environment is one of those things. Not having the optimal sleep environment. Daytime daytime sleep is a big contributor of that. Is the toddler having enough sleep? If they're not, maybe they're overtired, and that's then leading to this overtiredness, which is then leading to the early wake-ups. So there's lots of things at play, but personally that parent should be reverting back to their normal bedtime and trying to resolve the 5 AM wakings, and ideally the toddler should be sleeping roughly about 1.5 hours, give or take, post lunch during the day, with a wake-up time of about 4 to 4.5 hours before bedtime.
Thank you so much for that, Chris. So I really hope that helps answer your questions. So we're finished here, and I really hope you enjoyed the video. So Chris, where can we find out some more information on you?
So you can find me, my website is www.thedaddysleepconsultant.com. I have 2 different types of products. One is my one-to-one programs, where I work with families directly. I provide unlimited support as part of that, which very few sleep consultants do, which basically means I'm with you all the way through the program and even beyond. So I'm always on hand for your advice. I also sell online courses, which allow you to log in and use the course at your own pace. That's ranges from 5 months to 4 years, and I also have newborn online courses and a video consultation. So for any expecting parents out there, or parents of young newborns, if you want to get the right sleep foundations in place, then I can absolutely help you with that.
So Chris, are there any infos on social?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and Facebook at the Daddy Sleep Consultant. I've got lots of free resources on there, lots of routines, information on how to drop naps, lots of IGTV videos, some reels. I try and make it a little bit exciting from time to time as well. A lot of stuff about my family as well, so it's not all about sleep. I've also got a YouTube channel with lots of videos on there, so lots of different places to find me.
Wonderful. Again, thank you so much, Chris, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
And if you have any questions at all, feel free to book a virtual appointment with MBS. Thank you. See you again soon. Bye.